Imagine a place that, until years ago, was among the most dangerous countries on the planet and had serious issues with gang violence. But in a matter of years, violence decreased to the point of being safer than some European countries. In recent times, El Salvador has been making headlines, not for its former brutal violence statistics, but instead for its remarkable transformation. Under a new leadership, the nation has moved from being a dangerous no-go zone to an attractive hotspot for expats, retirees, and digital nomads. If someone told me only 10 years ago that in 2023, El Salvador would attract thousands of Americans and Europeans looking for a good life, low taxes, and extremely low cost of living, I would call him crazy. But not anymore. And it's not only in terms of safety that El Salvador had a complete transformation. It's also a social, economic, and surprisingly, even monetary change. So get ready for the unbelievable journey on how El Salvador was saved in only a few years. First, it's crucial to realize the terrible realities that a few years ago characterized El Salvador. In 2015, the nation recorded a staggering homicide rate of 103 per 100,000 residents, earning the ignominious title of the murder capital of the world. This grim reality was largely fueled by ruthless gang violence that held communities hostage. Gangs like Barrio 18 and MS-13 ruled the streets, and public shootouts were commonplace. For comparison, these are the murder rates in a few other places. Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, 20.4 homicides per 100,000 residents. New York, 11.4. São Paulo in Brazil, 7.2. Poland, 0.6. And just for you to remember, El Salvador in 2015 had 103 homicides for 100,000 people. So less than 8 years ago, El Salvador was 3 times more violent than Colombia, 4 times more violent than Brazil, and 15 times more violent than the US or Russia. And now, it's safer than all these countries. That data is staggering. The homicide rate has dropped from 103 to 7.8 per 100,000 people. You heard it right. The homicide rate in El Salvador dropped 92% in only 8 years. Their success is now influencing crime strategies in Honduras and possibly Guatemala. Since taking office a few years ago, their young president, Nayib Bukele, has cracked down hard on criminal elements, and in just 1 year, murders plummeted over 56.8%, going from 1,147 in 2021 to 496 in 2022. As one of his first steps, President Nayib Bukele asked Congress to declare a temporary state of emergency. This would mean that some constitutional rights would be suspended in order to fight the dangerous Barrio 18 and MS-13 gangs. The controversial law has been extended many times and is still in effect. Subsequently, he started a military offensive that has resulted in the arrest of over 60,000 people suspected of being members of gangs. Then he built the La Esperanza mega prison, which is the biggest penal institution in the world, and put almost 2% of the country's people in jail. Controversial, yes, but it did work. Today, children play on football fields that were once battlegrounds. Families go out at dinner without fear. Business operate without paying protection money. Bukele's approval rating is close to 90%, and it's easy to see why. But safety is not the only thing that changed in El Salvador. There are other interesting changes that made this country become so attractive to foreigners. El Salvador has become the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. This is a groundbreaking move that is attracting a lot of attention from investors. By integrating Bitcoin into its financial ecosystem, El Salvador is offering a level of financial freedom that is hard to find elsewhere. Imagine being able to make transactions without the need for a centralized bank or dealing with currency exchange fees. It's a game changer. Secondly, tax incentives. El Salvador is not just stopping at Bitcoin. They are also offering significant tax benefits to attract foreign investments. For instance, there will be no capital gains on certain transactions, which is a massive draw for investors. This is in line with the government's broader strategy to stimulate economic growth and attract foreign capital. And if these are not enough, there are other things that make El Salvador a very attractive place for expatriates. The low cost of living, for example. El Salvador boasts a very low cost of living compared to many other countries, allowing expats to stretch their savings further. For instance, cities like Santa Ana and other places that we'll mention soon offer affordable housing options, such as condominiums or apartments, at the prices you would pay for a parking spot in New York or London. This affordability extends to everyday expenses, including groceries, dining out, transportation, entertainment, and many others, making it easier to maintain a very comfortable lifestyle with limited budget. Then there is the affordable private healthcare. For Americans, one of the best aspects of retiring in El Salvador is the availability of quality healthcare services at affordable rates. While public healthcare in the country may face certain challenges, private hospitals and healthcare institutions offer reliable options. For example, the Hospital de Diagnóstico in San Salvador is a renowned private hospital with state-of-the-art facilities and a range of specialized departments. Retirees can receive comprehensive medical care including consultations, diagnostic tests, surgeries, and specialist treatments at a fraction of the cost they would pay in the US. Of course, there are still cons and negative sides to El Salvador. But before we jump into the negative aspects, I would like to ask a small favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And now, let's talk about the problems. And some of the problems in El Salvador are related to things like infrastructure and public services, for example. While the country has made strides in this area, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Rural or less developed regions may face limitations in utilities like water, electricity, and internet. The public healthcare and transportation systems also leave much to be desired, especially when compared to more developed countries. And the climate can also be an issue. If you're not used to tropical weather, El Salvador's high humidity and significant rainy season could be a deal breaker. The country in general has high levels of humidity and rainfall year-round, making it a challenging adjustment for those from drier or cooler climates. Language barriers are another hurdle. Spanish is the official language, and while some locals can communicate in basic English, you will likely face difficulties in more remote areas. If you don't speak Spanish, day-to-day interactions like talk to service providers or healthcare professionals can become a challenge. As you can see, El Salvador is far from perfect, but it's a country that improved tremendously, contrary to Canada, which is becoming a nightmare for many. And if you want to discover why Canada may not be the best place to move to, check out this video. Or, you also may take a look at this other one here.